for the Public Safety Committee meeting on Monday, March 23. Mr. White, our clerk, is going to arrange for an overflow room. If I understand, there's some folks at the Animal Services Commission who may or may not be on their way up here, and I apologize if this room proves too small. What I'm going to try to do is go through, we have a fairly crowded agenda, go through a bunch of items on the agenda that I think will clear out part of the room, so that we don't end up in a situation where people are inconvenienced by having to be crammed into here, because we certainly don't want to do that. We do appreciate that everyone has come downtown today. So, colleagues, first, if you could look at your agenda so we could do some consent items. Items 9, 10, 11, and 12 are consentable. However, item 9, Mr. Weezar is going to come up and speak on. Ms. Sample told me that. So we will hold item 9, assuming that Mr. Weezar comes and speaks. If for some reason Mr. Weezar...
He might change my vote.
Yeah. And just for the record today, Greg Smith is going out over Radio Free Europe, and you're also broadcasting in Uzbekistan. It looks like. Any other mics we could give you today?
All right. Yeah. The mayor was here earlier, and he likes microphones.
Like it. All right. So, colleagues, for now, 10, 11, and 12 on consent.
Yeah.
We'll move those, and if Mr. Weezar, for whatever reason, does not appear on the Weezar-Smith motion, we'll let Smith carry that for him.
What about number 8?
What about it?
What about consent on that? The grant.
Ms. Sample?
Uasi? Yeah.
It's a UASI grant.
Continue Uasi, and it's no longer a loan on it.
If
So.
you want.
Yeah.
Is this something we can do on consent?
Yes, sir. Mr. White?
That's fine then. All right. That's an item we didn't put on consent because typically council members beat people up over that. But I'm happy to say no. All right. So then let's begin with Chief Beck in item 1, please.
Item 1, Police Department to present verbal report relative to the status of DNA testing, backlog, and cold hits, and other DNA-related matters.
Good morning, folks.
Good morning. Yvette Sanchez-Owens, LAPD SID. I have to apologize for Chief Beck. He's not going to be able to join us this morning. He had to attend a funeral. So I will give you the numbers for our DNA. As of today, we have a total of 5,388 kits in our backlog. Since September, we've sent out 1,471 kits. Year to date, we've sent out 947. So we've done a big push the last few months. In-house, we've screened 85 cases so far this year, and we had 186 cases booked into evidence since the beginning of the year.
Good morning. Detective Pam Sterling, Robbery Homicide Division, Cold Case Unit. I have the CODIS hit report. We've had a total of 5 hits last week, bringing our total CODIS hits to 50 for this year as compared to 80 last year. We've had 2 homicide hits this year compared to 6 last year. We've had 29 sexual assaults compared to 50 last year at this time. And we've had 19 other hits, including burglary and robbery, as compared to 24 hits last year at this time. Of the 50 CODIS hits year to date, RHD personnel are handling 17 or 34%.
Thank you. I know that there was recently a task force meeting, and I know that's something that Chief Beck wanted to talk about. I don't know if there's any brief update you can give on that, just because I think it's good for the committee and the public to know that you all are going through the process that you said you would go through.
Yes, I can give a brief update. We met probably about a month ago now with several community groups and interested parties, including other governmental agencies that have a stake in this matter. And we presented to them our findings with regard to the task force that inventoried the freezers. And we found that there were roughly, I think it was 423, don't quote me on that number, but I think it was 423 cases that we found should have been pushed to top priority, and they have all been sent out. So everything that was a stranger-type rape has already been sent out. Chief Beck is planning to do a comprehensive report for you probably next time that you meet, and he does apologize for not making it this morning.
And what kind of attendance did you have from different experts and outside interested parties?
We had representatives from the city attorney, the district attorney, some of the groups. Human Rights Watch was one of the ones I can think of off the top of my head. We had detectives there, in-house detectives. We had our own staff from SID there. Several of the parties that are involved in the task force itself, like Mr. Chaliff, Jerry Chaliff, he was there as well. Sandy Jo MacArthur, Deputy Chief, was there. There were quite a number of outside agencies. I can't remember all off the top of my head.
And one thing that I believe that Chief Bratton and Chief Beck have talked about doing is, it's the term that they use, is comp statting the inventory and the work, in a sense providing regular public updates similar to what you all do in this committee. Where are you in that process?
We are in the process of developing the format by which that information will be captured, and I believe he intends to roll that out at the same time he rolls out the official task force report, which is in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Colleagues, do you have any questions on the status report? Sorry? All right. Well, look, we very much appreciate your being here, and we appreciate the work that you are doing to bring everything up to date, make it current, and making great progress. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Detective. Thank you, Ms. Sanchez-Owens. Okay, I'm told that on item 12, good morning, we're also joined by Mr. Parks. On item 12, which we had moved on consent, there's some CAO technical amendment. Can't I just say it goes with the technical amendment? If I say that, is that cool? Someone CAO-wise?
I have a copy of it.
Yeah? Okay?
Yeah.
All right, there's a technical amendment on item 12. Mr. Parks, we have moved 10, 11, and 12 on consent. If you could just look through your binder and let us know that that was all right with you while we call the next item.
Item 2, Fire Department to report relative to the managed hiring process and position funding.
8, 10, 11, and 12.
Good morning, Chief Mack, Fire Department. When we were here previous, we had came forth and asked that we were able to be our participant in the process of determining what managed hires should look like for the fire department. And with that, the council has granted that prospect. And we are now back with more thorough evaluation of our special duty personnel. We went person and position by position to determine which positions we felt could not be under the managed hiring program, as well as those that, although we are willing to put them under the managed hiring program, we still feel that they are essential personnel just for the business of the fire department, which you can expect our position is going to be. Every one of our positions is essential. But in that effort to assist the city, we have identified 117 of our 353 special duty positions as being able to go under the managed hiring program, and it's detailed in the spreadsheets that you have as part of our attachment. We also put impact statements for those 117 also, what the implications would be for their falling under the managed hiring program, and if we weren't able to fill them quickly, the potential that would come from their absence. So at this time, we would ask if there's any questions that we could assist you with.
You know, before we get to questions, colleagues, Mr. Miller and Mr. McCosker should come forward. There you are, Mr. McCosker. You're incognito with your new do there, Mr. McCosker.
St. Baldrick's Day.
It,
I didn't have where to go anyway.
but you're getting aggressive there. Good morning. Either of you wants to take it away?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, councilman, members. Pat McCosker, President, United Firefighters of Los Angeles City, Local 112. And I come here today to urge you to not put LAFD special duty sworn positions into the managed hiring process for a very simple reason, and it's because of the threat, I think, to public safety. You know, all of our sworn people that are doing so-called desk jobs, they're all contributing very much to the public safety effort, you know, here in Los Angeles. It's folks from those that train, you know, our first responders and our paramedics, to those that keep the supply lines open for the rest of us that are doing the work out in the field, to the folks that are inspecting the most dangerous buildings in the city, our high-rises and our underground tanks, and so on and so forth, to folks that are planning right now regarding our response to the next terrorist attack, for instance. So all kinds of folks that are in the so-called desk jobs on the LAFD who are wearing badges, their work is critical, you know, to the public safety effort that we're doing here in LA. Now, I understand the pressure on the budget very much, and that's why we've been working with fire department management these last few months to make sure that we, you know, close the gap that we had this budget year. And I understand that next year's budget is going to be difficult as well. But I ask you, you know, not to go about it this way. I think that the budget process that we're about to go through over the next couple of months is the appropriate public forum to be talking about whether or not a particular position, you know, is worthwhile and needs to be funded. I will also say that to have it happen this way, where when somebody retires, suddenly there's a vacancy in the fire department that may or may not be filled, is the wrong way to go about it on so many other levels too. You know, who's going to do the work that still has to be done? Is it going to be given perhaps to a civilian employee now? If so, there are bargaining unit issues there. That's a meet and confer, you know, for the union, and something that we'd be very interested in talking about before we lose work to another bargaining unit, you know, unfairly. So a whole bunch of reasons why I think going about it that way is inappropriate, and I ask you to not support, you know, this effort to put us in the managed hiring process.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you. Good morning, council members, and thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning. I'd also like to express my appreciation to Councilman Parks, Councilman Smith, and Councilman Rosendahl for the difficult task that they have in trying to balance not only this year's budget, but looking forward to the dire financial straits, and also to the CAO's office for the work that they're doing. I, too, am going to echo a lot of the same sentiments that Pat McCosker echoed and that Chief Mack has been echoing. We look at these positions in the managed hiring process, the ones that have been identified, and they are support positions, but they serve a role in emergency operations. For example, the majority of our special duty positions serve on incident management teams. Those were the individuals that were called out during the brush fires, during the train collisions, that are doing support and incident emergency duties relative to the rest of the city. The rest of the city has to continue to go on while we're faced with these emergency operations. Again, the majority of these positions are supervisory positions, so there's accountability issues that we've been faced with and that we have to continue to deal with. Also, that the report, I think, identifies a lot of the good explanations and the consequences that might occur if this managed hiring goes on. There's going to be a time lapse. We went through the same process in the late 90s, early 2000s, when we were faced with similar budget issues. And the effectiveness and the efficiency, once again, that once the managed hiring process was lifted and they went through, really served a detrimental impact and service to the citizens that are ultimately paying our salary. So we too urge that give due consideration to exempting the fire department from the managed hiring process. Thank you.
Thank you both for that. And I mean, we need to go around the table here, but the reason that I wanted to make sure we had an opportunity to discuss this in public safety is I agree with you, gentlemen, and I'd like to find a way to do that. And I recognize, as I think you have very forthrightly, that it's just a really, really, really bad year, and it's a bad time. So,
say something. You know, one of the things, and it's part of having something in about a 100-page report. I think if you had read the entire report, you'd realize the management hiring program was eliminated in that report. So there's no such thing as managed hiring anymore. And what was replaced was a facilitated process with the CAO being the focal point of hiring positions. So when everybody's say they're opposed to the managed hiring, so are we. That's why we got rid of it. And because the meetings were not able to be held for days or weeks at a time, it did not service the operating department. So it's gone, but what was replaced was what appeared in my mind was a phone call to the CAO to talk to them about an opening, which allows them to facilitate it by getting a sign-off from the CAO in the mayor's office. And so, as of that last financial report, there's no such thing as managed hiring anymore. And so, that is something that I think we all should be aware of. So we're opposed to it too, but we didn't view in these positions, if we understood them, that most of them are promotion positions. Many of them are on a biannual rotation cycle. Many of them go through a process of selection. So they're not instantaneous selections in the first place. So if opening occurs and you have a process to go through for selection, simultaneously you could call the CAO's office and talk to them prior to going through the selection. So that was the whole intent, was to facilitate it and to take it out of the managed hiring, but understanding that these were not positions that were without a process. They had to go through a process. People had to go through whatever interviews, whatever it took. And then when people were on the biannual rotation, you pretty well knew 2 years from now when they were leaving. So it wasn't like a surprise that the opening came up. So that's why these positions were selected, saying, and also what was intended, and we haven't seen next year's budget, but our expectation is probably, as the chief has talked about, reorganizing, talked about a number of things, some of those positions might be affected in the 9-10 budget. And the expectation is that if they are, would you fill them now and have an attrition problem in next year's budget if the intent was to reorganize and compress and things of that nature. And so that was why we took them out of managed hiring and looked at them saying, if there's a process already and you have to get lists validated or lists certified, go through an interview process, there's time that you're going to need anyway. What would delay it if you had an added phone call to the CAO? And that's what we were asking for in the report.
And Councilman, yes, we understand that, as you just said, that it's no longer the managed hiring process. Our reservations still are, even with the process, as you said, that would still remain in place with the call to the CAO and then getting concurrence from the mayor's office and the CLA, considering that we're in very severe budget times, and we understand, and what we would expect is that they're going to be very, they're going to scrutinize each and every position to the highest level, and we would assume that. So we're still concerned that even though it is a more streamlined process, that there still may be times that critical positions in the fire department that we are proposing go into this process would still be held up. And
but also we have to realize that, we're talking about a department that, as of a couple of weeks ago, was $6 million over this budget. So we'd hope that there'd be some scrutiny as we go forward in selecting positions, because we just don't have $6 million laying around to fill those holes. And so that's the whole purpose of trying to help departments manage their budgets, so that at the end of the year you don't give us a bill and say we were 100% deployed and here find $7 million for us, because we don't have it. So we're saying, can we find ways during the year to where if you're out of sync in your budget, how do we bring it in line during the fiscal year?
And we agree with what you're saying, and the fire department has been very conscious about finding monies to cover its issues this fiscal year. And left to our own devices, we do make a very concerted effort to ensure that we don't contribute to the city's overall deficit, as we've done again and again this year. So I hear what you're saying, and I agree that as a city body, you have to ensure that we are being fiscally responsible. But I would have to say that the fire department has been very fiscally responsible this year in trying to alleviate its own deficits.
We'll just probably agree to disagree.
I understand.
But we think 6 million is kind of a pretty good-sized number.
Yeah, we understand.
It's not a billion.
It's not a billion, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
come on.
If I may,
Lighten up.
one of the reasons I came down here today was 2 weeks ago when this issue was before the full council, the CAO was up testifying, and I think under questioning from Councilmember Alarcon, the CAO eventually said that this was an effort at workforce reduction. That, in other words, these positions, many of them may not be, or the intention was that they would not be filled. I believe Councilmember Alarcon was saying, well, how will this save us money? And eventually he said, well, this is a program with an eye toward workforce reduction. And so I think that's what's before you today, and that's why I urge you to not support it, to eliminate positions, public safety dedicated positions on the fire department in this manner by making this CAO the point man on it, you know, the control point, I think is wrong. I think it deserves public discussion. I think you all should make policy regarding which positions are funded on the fire department and which aren't, and I urge you to be against this program.
Mr. Reyes wants to
Yeah,
speak.
I wanted to,
Mr. Smith.
well, there's some clarity now. I mean, Councilman Parks is saying this is not a process where we're trying to put forth management hiring processes. That's what we're hearing. You're saying that every position is important, therefore, we don't want to be part of that process. We can manage our own, correct?
You can take it that, yes, we consider every position we have in our special duty essential.
And yet
But in an effort to work with the council, the chief has identified positions that can go into the new process, and that's his way of trying to work with you and working toward resolving the city's budget.
And Ms. McCosker is saying there should be a public debate, a public discussion of what is important and what isn't. Well, how public can we get? I mean, this is a public forum. What does it take for us to learn more about what your department feels is sacred, what isn't, what's going to get us to cut back on that $6 million deficit the department has? I mean, are we going to wait for you to do that? I mean, we're trying to trigger a process. We have a time frame to work with. So this discussion has to happen sooner than we think, because the fiscal year is going to be coming up. We're getting ready for next year's budget. We're getting deeper and deeper in the hole every day. So where does it stop? I mean, publicly, people will say, well, who's the bad guy here? Well, council cut off the fire department. No, the mayor did. No. We got to get into a place where we can have some common sense and say, this is real and this isn't. When do we hear that from you?
If I may, and I appreciate the comments, Councilmember. I think what's important is, and I don't want to put any less emphasis or credibility on other departments, but I think there's a core need within any governmental agency or within any city, and that's for public safety. And I think if you take a look at what we're doing and how we're doing that, I think we're extremely effective and efficient. I think if times were good, you'd be seeing the department up here asking for more personnel, more staff personnel to do it. But we understand, and I think the department, not speaking on behalf of management, but I think they understand that too. And I think we're doing the best possible service that we can. We're providing excellent service to the public based on truly limited resources in those support capacities. We have a supply and maintenance division that's down mechanics. We have over 70 clerical administrative support vacancies right now that's causing that trickle-down effect. It's a snowball effect that's going to have an impact on ultimately the public. And I think if somebody comes in and truly evaluates what we're doing and how we're doing it, you'll see that we are effective and efficient.
But again, we are $6 billion in the hole. We have another year ahead of us. We don't want to compromise public safety, so we are dependent on you to tell us what works and what doesn't. But to have a standoff doesn't make any sense. We're trying to figure out a process. CAO would be an approach. It's a policy decision on our part. We understand that. But if this doesn't work, what will?
If I may, I think the proper approach is that very public process that the council has to develop a budget, which we're about to again go through for the next fiscal year, and then the responsibility of the council also to hold us to our budget. And I think that you've been responsible and we've been responsible this year regarding our budget. I will say I think we're $6 million in the red right now for reasons beyond our control, and some of them reasons that shouldn't have been applied in that way to us. What I mean by that is the lawsuits that the fire department has suffered, those things had come out of the fire department budget, unlike other city departments, including the LAPD. They lose a lawsuit, it doesn't come out of their budget, but it has with us. Another situation for us would be the mutual aid responses that we've had. We've gone all over the country, as you know, and especially here in California with the brush fires, on mutual aid at great expense to the fire department and not properly been reimbursed by the federal government, by the state government, and of course, even those monies that come in, normally they go right into the general fund. So they're paid out of the fire department budget. So I feel like our budget, perhaps, there's some fuzzy math going on here. It hasn't been treated fairly. I would say we've bent over backwards to make sure we operate within budget, including not hiring the last 50 firefighters this year as we would have liked to, and other sacrifices we've made regarding equipment and supplies and stuff. So,
Can the CEO respond to that? Do we have items in that budget that are clearly not management fault, but because of mutual aid and lawsuits? How big is that number?
Brought by their union, that's part of their budget.
I'm Mark Davis with the CCAO's office. The $3.8 million for the court settlement, that was for the back wages.
Yeah.
The part of that was half of it. It was $7.6 million was a settlement, and only 3.8 of that came out of the fire department budget, solely because it was for the back pay for the salaries for sworn. As far as the FEMA reimbursements, yes, they have sent out people to the USAR and up north for the fires for the reimbursements that have not come in yet.
But they are to be reimbursed.
Oh, yeah.
And the tradition is the police department as well as the fire department, and I can argue this point because I've always sided with the departments. I think you both get the short end of the deal of this. But those reimbursements go to the general fund, as well as the police department reimbursements. That's always been the status. And it's a perfect argument to say it shouldn't be, but that's the way it is, and it's always been that way. So you've not been disadvantaged this time by those events.
But it goes back to the question of, has the department been responsible? And we have. And as itemized by Pat McOsker as well as CAO, there are things that have been put to our budget this year that wouldn't normally, or as you said, Councilman, would contribute to offsetting our deficit that we don't get credit for. And that's why I have to again say we've been very responsible in managing our budget as well as coming up with different sources of other funds to cover those things that we saw were going to be or create a deficit. So, and as Councilman Parks...
Just to summarize, neither of the things, or the things that led to the red ink, they're not the result of profligate spending, buying something you shouldn't have bought, doing something you shouldn't have done, or the result of a lawsuit that has to do with a technical issue regarding how you calculate it. Just that's not a, you can't ascribe fault to that. The law says here's the formula, and that's what you got to do.
That's not necessarily so. I think we went through a process at the end of the budget year last year where the department recommended taking 18 positions out of the budget. The city council gave you the positions back under the authority that you not fill them unless you found the money. You never eliminated the positions. You ran them all year long and basically used overtime money to fill the positions in the field. So that basically ran your budget 18 positions over. We found the money late in the budget year to compensate for that. So these issues are not necessarily just the area of the funding that you related as far as the lawsuit. We've done that historically on back pay lawsuits. They come out of the fund of the department. It's not new. The fact that the department is funded to send people to unusual occurrences in and outside of the county are issues in which it's already funded, so the reimbursement comes back to the general fund. The funds that you found during the year The CAO and others looked at it and said these were not appropriate funding mechanisms because they were one-time funding. So these are all questions that have been asked and answered, and even though you have made recommendations, they didn't fit into the financial policies of the city, and so they were not accepted. And so to keep bringing them up over and over as though you solved the budget and then we unsolved it isn't necessarily accurate. And then when we look at these positions, we're talking about a matter of convenience. It appears that it's inconvenient for you to adopt a process of contacting the CAO when you're going through a selection process of people that are not automatically selected into these positions. They're not automatically promoted. There's a process that and also your transfer doesn't happen automatically. What is it, once every deployment period? So you may have someone leaving and you have to wait for the transfer. So all of these delays play into the issue of why is it inconvenient to go to the CAO and discuss something as an opening. And to clarify one other issue that Mr. McCosker mentioned, when Mr. Alarcon mentioned about is this a cost-saving issue, certainly it's cost-saving every time a position is not filled. But what was stated by the CAO, if I remember correctly, was that there's an expectation or at least some indication that there is consideration within the fire department to either merge or do something in the 9-10 budget that may be different than what they currently have. And rather than fill positions that might not be there next year at their request, then we're saying that may be why that discussion should go on, because if you're not going to have that position next year at your request as you merge and reorganize, then why would we fill it in the last 2 months of this fiscal year if it doesn't exist next year?
Okay. To respond, we have no problem with going through processes. We understand the need for them, and that is an accountability measure. Our concern only with the new process is that we potentially will have positions that will be delayed and not filled at all. And so that's our concern, not the process. We'll go through processes. On the issue of reorganization, our reorganization is to make our management more efficient and more in a line with what best management practices are throughout the country and even here in the county when we look at some of the other law enforcement and fire agencies. There isn't any consolidation that's going to result in the reduction of positions because, frankly, the work isn't going anywhere. So the work is still here. If there's any consolidation, it's for efficiency and management. So kind of clarify the issue of a reorganization. It's simply to better structure our management processes than reduce staff, and as I said, work is not going anywhere.
Let me ask you one other question. What do you estimate in a year how many positions actually leave from these 300 positions?
If you want to just take it by thumbnail, we rotate every 2 years.
No, I'm just talking about vacancies. I mean, if you rotate, you're planning the move, but just the unexpected vacancy.
Well, unexpected vacancies would only come if someone were to unexpectedly retire or have some special need to leave their position. But as you had indicated earlier, all our rotations are occurring usually every 2 years.
You're planning them.
Right.
How many positions do you estimate leave there unexpected?
I would say it's a small number unexpectedly. So I agree with you, what you said earlier. We know what's coming up, and we can get into the process. And our argument isn't the process. It's just potentially not getting filled.
Mr. Reyes?
Yeah, you know, trying to move this forward, this is a report, right? This is a committee report that we're listening to at the request of the council to send it back to public safety. Are there positions that are significant that will be delayed by this process? Are there significant positions in your radar or in the radar of all the other stakeholders who are concerned with this that can be brought forward to this committee and say, this is a concern of ours because these are significant positions that we will be impeded by this process? Are you there? Do you have that ability?
Yes, we are there, and the chief did take to heart what you had asked him to do, and that's why of our 373 special duty positions, he has put 117 up for being subject to this new process.
And how do we connect those positions with the $6 million that are in the red? Is there a relevancy to that? How do we have that discussion since we're trying to deal with a budget shortfall for the city?
Right. Well, we understand that we need to be partners in trying to help the city's budget. We understand that. And that's why the chief has gone forth and put up the 117 positions to fall under this process. So he definitely understands that, and that's why he has made this effort. The ones that he kept out of the process, as indicated earlier, are the ones that are in our incident management teams, respond to the EOC, the DOC, our grant or fee supported are very critical positions. So that's how we arrived at the 117. And again, I'll repeat myself, that's not that they're not critical, but the chief is trying to work with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, did you want to say something? Mr. Zine?
Mr. White, thank you. Looking at the numbers here, Chief, are we building any more fire stations? Are they all built out?
No, we're still building more fire stations.
How many more?
Let's see. We think maybe 3 more.
They're in the phase now of construction?
They're in various phases, correct.
Because I was looking at the Prop F and the Prop Q bond.
Correct.
Those, obviously, they're still building. We need to keep those.
Right.
The recruit training section, those are part of the managed hiring. Do we have any classes going through?
We have 2 classes currently running right now. One will finish up in April, and that's the one that will discontinue for the balance of the fiscal year. And then we will, the other drill tower, when it completes its current cycle, it will then go into the next academy class.
So there's savings on those positions.
That's correct.
And also on the fee-supported positions that are listed, does the fee support position take care of the salary and benefits, or is it just that the city receives some compensation for that service?
I don't know for sure, but I would say by the discussions we've had is that the fee-supported structures are designed to recover entire city costs.
So that'd be salary and benefits?
Salary and benefits, and I believe they're using the cap rate, so that would cover all city costs.
And I remember you and I had a discussion after the council meeting, and with good faith, I think the chief has done something to try and satisfy the needs of the deficit. I understand from the union's position, both the command officers and from the UFLAC, they're concerned. But like my colleagues have said, how do we come up with $6 million? And this is only one of the many departments where we face this situation. And I think if we don't do anything, we just go deeper in the hole. We saw what happened with the state, $43 billion. Now they're selling $11 billion in bonds to try and keep their head above water. And the governor now wants to increase gasoline tax in addition to every other tax that's going on. And I don't know if the city's in the position to increase taxes with all the other taxes that are taking effect. So I commend the department for coming forward. Whether they all are able to go into managed hiring, some of them, but I want to thank you for at least taking the effort to come forward with something versus where it was before. I mean, whatever department it is, something can be shaved back. I've been around almost 41 years with the city, from the police department to city council, and there's no question that some of those positions, for whatever reason, can be shaved back for a period of time and then maybe reinstated down the road. So I know that somehow the court decisions that have rendered the city liable, for them to charge the department with that, I don't think that was appropriate. Nevertheless, that's what was done. And I know that lawsuits are filed for a variety of reasons. To jeopardize the fire department for that is really not the appropriate thing to do. That's a whole other subject matter. But again, I appreciate and thank that I looked at all these different positions, whether considered for managed hiring. So I think they took a valiant effort to try and do something to say, we're going to work with you folks, instead of just slamming the door and saying, this is it, nothing.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Well, probably some more.
You getting ready to make a recommendation?
Let's hear your recommendation, sir.
No, I just wanted to just throw one thing out. And I think one of the things as we particularly get closer to the budget that's important for all of us, I don't think there's anybody of the 15 members of the city council that are not for the fire department or the police department. And when we frame discussions as it relates to whether you're for or against, I think it unnecessarily pits people against each other. But what we need to realize as we talk about the importance of all these departments, ITA, which you use constantly, general services, which you use constantly, street lighting, which you use the benefit of their services, street paving, they all are under this process of hiring. And their positions to them are equally as important, and all of us would be less effective if the streets aren't paved, if the lights don't work, if ITA doesn't get their computers done, and these variety of things. So I think we have to put it in a composite and say, how does the city run? But it's not necessarily against one department. It's a matter of how does the larger city function with the minimum resources that we have. And so the issue is that it's not anti-fire department because we question it. It just happens to be one of the larger deficits that we have. And so the issue is how do we solve it in the sense of dealing with that. I can make a recommendation that we move the chief's report and we salvage the 117 that goes through a process and move it on, because I don't think it's worth the energy of the time to keep discussing it, because the issue is that we estimate there's no more than 4, maybe 5 positions a year that leave unexpectedly out of those 300. And for us to have had 2 committee meetings and all that over this process doesn't really bode well on our time, energy, or funding.
Is this going to another committee, or is it?
We're going to wait because I don't want to hear it again.
We don't want to torture it too much.
No, we're not going to listen to it again.
Well, no, I appreciate the suggestion by Mr. Parks. I mean, I would very much like to find a way to accomplish what Mr. McCosker and Mr. Miller have suggested. I just don't know, if we have the votes here to do that today.
Well,
I just
it's
don't.
not going to go to another committee.
I think we just moved what the chief recommended.
Mr. Reyes, is there something you want to?
No, I just think it's some real, how can I say this, accountability that we need to look at as we look at our significant roles in this process. And I was trying my best to figure out, is there another option, another alternative? But I'll support Councilman Parks' recommendation because it does show respect to the chief's effort in trying to address this concern. But at the same time, every department of the city is going to have to realize that we're going to go through some very hard decisions, and there's going to be some real unhappy folks, and we're doing our best to do what's fiscally proper and healthy for the city. So this is a tough time for everybody.
Let me ask the union folks. What is your recommendation other than say no? I mean, Nancy Reagan said that, just say no, but there's got to be something more than no.
Speaking on behalf of the command officers, I think I would support Councilman Parks' motion that go with what the fire chief put forward. I think that would be a good compromise for everybody. Times are tough, and we understand that. And with all due respect to Councilman Parks, there is a difference between the streets not being paved and the lights not being on. The service we provide saves lives.
Yeah, but you can't save those lives unless you can go down those streets and the lights are on.
I think we'll get there. I think we'll get there.
I just want to bring that up.
No, I understand that, but and I agree. Pitting departments is no good, and we all understand that the dire financial straits are, but there is a difference. Thank you.
You can't go through those potholes.
Let's let Mr. McCosker answer your question, Mr. Zhang.
Yes.
I appreciate how difficult this is. You're right. Everybody's right up here. The money's tight right now. These are tough times, and all the programs that the city provides are very, very important. We get that more than anybody. I've always supported other city workers especially, and all the programs that you guys value, we very much tend to value as well. Officially my position is what it is, which is that the budget process is the public process in which you should decide what the staffing level, how much fire protection you're going to provide, and how much police protection you're going to provide, and how many streets you're going to pave. And that's why I say I don't think making the CAO the point person on this in this way makes sense to me. But I understand that politics is about compromise, that you've got competing interests here, and I very much appreciate that, if you follow me. So I understand, and I see the chief working, with you in good faith, trying to come up with priorities. And what he's done, I think, is prioritize which are the positions that we really could not afford to have be in a managed hiring process and have any delay in filling, and others that are less important. I understand that as well.
And I guess that was the concern that Mr. Reyes was getting at a few moments ago. So is there further discussion on the item? Or, now, Mr. White points out that it was here as an informational item, so we'll just construe Mr. Parks' suggestion as a motion. With Mr.
And we'll waive
Reyes'
it also from Budget and Finance and just get it to council.
And your motion again, Mr. Parks, is to do
That
what?
we accept the fire chief's recommendation of the less number within the hiring process.
The 117 special duty positions? Okay.
We
Thank
accept
you.
his recommendation.
It's good for anyone other than budget?
No, this is public safety. It does not refer to budget.
Okay. If
All right.
we don't
Okay,
have
so-
to waive it, we don't waive it then.
Okay, so then that's what we will do, I think sort of regrettably, but with our eyes wide open about the realities that we're facing. And we appreciate everyone coming here for the discussion today, and we'll see you back in council with the item being reported out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Colleagues and members of the audience, we have two council members here on two other items, so we're going to take their items out of order. The brief item will be Mr. Weezer on item 9, and then we're going to let Mr. Cardenas, who is here, who I recognize might not have had the chance to be here. I'm grateful that you're here, Mr. Cardenas, because you have been the leader on the animal services issues, and we're going to let you kick that item off in a second. But Mr. Weezer is here on a brief item, and then we'll get to the animal services item. Good morning, Mr. Weezer.
Good morning, Mr. Weiss, and thank you very
Item 9,
much.
Mr. White.
Item 9, motion of Ms. Smith requesting the city attorney prepare an ordinance allowing the city to offer rewards for information leading to the arrest and conviction of individuals who assault or shoot off-duty police officers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss, and thank you for scheduling this motion so quickly in this committee. And I'd also like to thank Mr. Smith for seconding this motion. Colleagues, there have been two recent shootings in the east side of off-duty officers which should prompt our immediate attention. The first incident took place last August where an L.A. Sheriff Deputy Juan Abel Escalante was killed outside his Cypress Park home as he prepared to go to work at the Men's Central Jail in downtown Los Angeles. Two suspected gang members have been charged in the case, but no motive has been disclosed. Mr. Escalante was the pride of his neighborhood, a family man with children. He went to the same high school as I did. And on January 31st of this year, LAPD officer Anthony Razzo ended up in critical condition after an altercation with two teens outside his city terrace home in the unincorporated portion of Los Angeles County. It led to Officer Razzo was on his way to play a round of golf, and two youths were arrested. Their motivation is not known at this time. Whenever a law enforcement official is assaulted, it is a cause for concern. And in this case, it came to my attention when we attempted to offer a reward leading to the arrest of the individuals who had shot Officer Razzo. We realized that we could not. As mentioned, this occurred outside city limits, and he was also off-duty. But whether the officers were assaulted because of their work or not, as a city, our hands should not be tied in offering these reward motions. Current law does not allow the city council to offer reward motions for shootings that occur outside the city when an officer is off-duty. With over 80% of LAPD officers living outside the city, it's not hard to see why this also presents a problem. And when you consider that a lot of these officers work dangerous details such as gang, vice, and narcotics, the potential for attack of an off-duty officer is very real, and as a city, we need to use every tool at our disposal when our officers are assaulted, regardless of whether they're in uniform at the time or happen to be standing outside of the city of Los Angeles. Our officers wake up every day knowing they may have to risk their lives to save ours. And for that, we owe them more than just our gratitude. We owe them our resolve to protect them as much as we possibly can and to seek justice on their behalf using every tool at our disposal. So I respectfully ask through this motion that you instruct the city attorney to quickly prepare an amendment to our city ordinance pertaining to offering rewards to close this loophole. If an officer is on duty, they are covered wherever they might be. We should also ensure that we do everything we can to protect our officers while they're off duty and outside of city limits. It's an ordinance that will not, in this tough, dire, strict economic times, cost anything, but we should do everything to close this loophole and do it immediately. Thank you for your attention.
Great idea, Mr. Weezer. I don't know if colleagues have comments on it, but we are certainly going to do exactly what you request. Ms. Sample points out to me that a few weeks ago, Ms. Gruhl had a motion here regarding whether burglary could be included as a crime for which the council can offer reward. And so I guess as we send your motion and request to the city attorney's office, we'll ask them to look at the reward ordinances as a whole so that they can report back, more gently to us as well. I know Mr. Parks has also asked about reward ordinances for Part 1 crimes.
Yeah. What we would ask for in a sense, because we've worked on this a couple of times, currently we have a $50,000 max per incident of injury or death. And it's news to me. When we discussed this before and raising the money from 25 to 50, we were advised that police officers would fit into Section 1 where it dealt with misconduct. They didn't give us information that if you're out of the city that you were limited. But I would suggest as we develop our processes that on multiple incidents or multiple injuries or deaths, we go up to 75,000. Graffiti, we're at 1,000. What I would suggest is that for police officers on or off duty, that we would make a recommendation that our reward motion goes up to 100,000, that we keep the 50,000 for other assaults and homicides, we keep the multiple issue of 75, and then we create something called other Part 1 crimes and make it up to 10,000. And that way we cover Ms. Gruhl and all of this under one revamp ordinance.
Yeah, point. Sounds good. And the focus on this one was simply stated that sometimes we do not know why our officers are attacked. It may be related to the line of work they are in, and we should do everything possible, no matter where they are, whether they're inside the city or outside the city limits. It seems kind of arbitrary that we have that ordinance right now. Okay, great. Thank you.
Everyone agree, I think, Mr. Smith?
I was just going to add that police officers are never really off duty. They're off the clock, but their duty extends 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, anywhere in the state of California. And so a police officer may be doing something in his neighborhood to protect the life and property of the neighborhood and get killed in the line of duty. We may not even know that, but he's really doing police work sometimes, and you just don't know. That extends to officers under 830 and 832 of the Penal Code across the state of California. So I think that this is a good idea. It's, it's 830 or 32, same thing.
Thank you.
Well, you can put in there if you
Well,
want.
we can certainly ask city attorney to look at all that.
And I think we have to have one caveat, because periodically, not often, but periodically we'll have an officer do something illegal.
That does happen.
Yeah, and get injured or killed.
Yeah.
Those are not the circumstances that we're talking about rewards. I think we need to have that.
Haven't seen a lot of motions for rewards in this.
No, I'm just saying, but again, if you just leave it blanket and say any officer killed.
You don't.
In the sense, I think you have to have that caveat that it's.
That's right.
It's, I guess, duty-related or within some kind of a caveat.
I don't think that's what Mr. Weezer intended.
I know, I'm just saying, but again, if we make it so broad, it can be interpreted as such.
Yeah.
I just like to add, I know that we have reserve officers that take motorcycles home now. They've got a new category where they've got level 1, 2, and 3. If the city attorney could look at that aspect to see what categories would also be included in this. Because they keep that equipment at their home, and they're reserve officers in a level 1 capacity.
Why don't you put it at anybody under Section 830 or 32 of the Penal Code, and that covers everybody, including our security police here. That would include them. That would include library, airports, harbor police, all the forces. So don't be specific to LAPD, but say any officer of the city of Los Angeles under 830 or 832 of the Penal Code.
All right, well, sounds good. City attorney understands, I think, what everyone's been talking about, and they'll present us either comprehensive ordinance or comprehensive suggestions.
Yes, as long as Mr. White got the figures that Mr. Parks was talking about, because we need to have specific direction about if you want different categories. I got the $100,000 for
police
any
officers.
officer of the
Currently, it's
city.
$50,000 for death or injury to other citizens. If we have a multiple injury or death in one circumstance, it's 75 currently. Graffiti is at 1,000. Graffiti or vandalism is at 1,000. An additional one would be for other Part 1 crimes up to 10,000.
Okay, so 10,000 for Part 1
But we say
crimes
up
and up
to.
to 100,000
Yes.
for
Police
any
officer.
officer of the city of Los
Yeah.
Angeles.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Want to make sure.
Well, with that, thank you, Mr. Weezer. The city attorney will prepare that ordinance as you requested.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. All right. That's that item. Let's call the Animal Services item. We're joined by Mr. Cardenas, who has been the city's leader in this regard, and I think everybody on the council, certainly everyone who's spoken out, has been outraged at what was announced last week and proposed last week by Mr. Bogues, because it is about the most cost-effective line item in the city budget. I mean, when you help folks who cannot afford to spay or neuter their dogs, when you help them to do that, A, you're doing a good thing, a humane thing, and B, you're doing a very fiscally responsible thing, because as Mr. Cardenas pointed out when we spoke about this on the phone last week, you know, those animals are just going to produce so many more animals. They're going to overrun the shelters, impose a great fiscal and administrative burden on the city, and ultimately result in very tragic consequences for those animals. And so it was a very poor suggestion by the department, but I know Mr. Cardenas, Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Zine, and others on the council, Mr. Reyes as well, have been very outspoken, and let's hear now from the person who's led the effort in this body, Mr. Cardenas. And thank you for being here, this morning, Mr. Cardenas.
Thank
I know
you.
you made adjustments to be here.
Thank you, council members, and it feels good to see a committee that's got full complement of members present. Must
Good
be
to see you
covering
here
some
too, Councilman.
Important issues here. This is an issue that I think speaks to the fiscal responsibility, not only of this department, but of the city of Los Angeles. For example, on February 26th, the spay-neuter ordinance was signed into effect and became enforceable on October 1st, 2008. Animal Services Spay-Neuter Advisory Committee was created with that motion, and coincidentally, this March 30th, just in a few days, they are due to bring their report forward and their findings. But on March 10th, 2009, just a few days ago, the Department of Animal Services terminated the spay and neuter discount voucher program and instructed all rescue groups to return all vouchers to the department no later than March 13, 2009. As of today, the city appears to not have a spay and neuter voucher program currently in place. And the purpose for this motion is to get clarity on that and for us to find out what the intent of the department is. And I think it's important for us to speak to the record, as you did, Mr. Chairman, about the importance of this program. But let me give you some figures that the city of Los Angeles, some of them we're proud of, some of them we're not so proud of. One of the figures we're not proud of is the fact that we still are euthanizing over 15,000 dogs and cats a year. In addition to that, we've spent, apparently in 2007, the department spent $2 million euthanizing animals. On top of that, when you look at a dog or a cat, not the maximum, but the average offspring that live through a litter of dogs and cats is 6 offspring. So when you start to do the math and you start to realize the fact that a dog or a cat is only pregnant for about 2 months. So technically speaking, they can have several litters just in 1 year. That being the case, even though only a fraction of those puppies and little kittens make it into our shelters, and they only have a certain amount of time before they are either adopted out or they're euthanized. The bottom line is, I don't understand or see how the department could actually figure that we're going forward and not backwards by getting rid of the spay and neuter voucher program. We have 2 voucher programs. One is a $70 value voucher for very low-income families and seniors, and low-income seniors, and then the other one is a flat $30 value voucher program to help people, incentivize them to please do the right thing and spay and neuter their animals.
It's not need-based or...
The $30 one is not need-based. If somebody comes to the counter and we do have vouchers available, we will provide them for one, with one, yes. So that's not need-based. So in addition to that, I think it's extremely important for us to understand that in these tough fiscal times, we would be going backwards by not continuing the voucher program. Not only should we make sure that people comply with the law, we should make sure that we try to make it as equitable as possible. And for selfish reasons, to the taxpayers and to us as policymakers, I think it's important for us to make sure that we try to hinder future need for dollars such as $2 million a year just to euthanize animals. That's not $2 million to spay and neuter. That's $2 million in 2007, the most recent figures we have for a complete year. $2 million just for euthanizing. And in addition to that, some of these animals, when they come into our shelters, they don't say, well, we just might be euthanizing this animal, so we're not going to give it any care if in fact it is sick. The animals actually get proper care regardless of what the end result is for those animals. So it's important for us to understand that aside from that $2 million, we're going to be exacerbating the need for the department to come forward and ask for additional funds as the fiscal year goes on in the coming fiscal year. In addition to that, as I said earlier, it's important for people to understand that it's very, very untimely that the department would go ahead and terminate the spay and neuter voucher program and call in all the existing vouchers with our partners in this community, and then not even take into account, or it doesn't appear that they took into account, that just last year we created a spay and neuter advisory committee. A lot of work has gone into it. The report is due on March 30th. As far as I'm aware of, they are going to be coming out with a report. Why the department would make such a decision and action so close to us finding out more about ourselves, I don't understand that.
Do you have any information about whether they were even consulted as part of this process?
I'm not aware of them being consulted. Nobody has come forward and said, council member, they've been talking to us about
It was certainly your intent that they be consulted for precisely these sort of issues.
Oh, absolutely. This group of folks volunteering for this advisory committee didn't exist before last year. There are many partners that we partner with and we talk to and we get a lot of information from, because there are many, many partners out there in the community, not-for-profits and rescue organizations that work well with the city. But at the same time, this is the most formal group that we've had advising not only the city but the department. And as far as I can tell, they haven't been consulted. They haven't let my office know that they've been consulted.
I want to let you finish your presentation, if that's the...
Well, the purpose of this motion is for us to get report backs. The purpose of this motion is for us to hear from the department. And as the motion states, we'd like them to report to this committee by March 31st.
Thank you. Now, colleagues, we have department representatives here, and we've got a substantial stack of public comments. But I think while Mr. Cardenas is here at the table, I want to give you all the chance to speak with him or direct questions to him. We're going to have the department and the public speak in a moment. But I think all of us really appreciate and admire the work that you've done on this, Mr. Cardenas, and the important changes that you've made in the city's laws and policies. And I don't think the council is going to let the department change things the way they've proposed. How we're going to get there, the next couple of weeks are going to tell.
We all have work to do.
Yeah, but I know we're going to get there.
Well, I appreciate it, and if you don't mind, I'd like to take a second to say thank you for acknowledging the motions that we've been able to sign into law when it comes to animal safety and also when it comes to spay and neutering. But at the same time, I think you should thank my wife and kids, because they're the ones who truly have educated me on how important it is that we take care of our pets and that we care for them. And they're not policymakers, although they love our dogs and cats very much and they care about animals. They actually got me, after 12 years of being in office, in the last few years to really focus on this and understand the importance of it and the value of it. And then one more point to make. I was very fortunate to meet a very dynamic individual who, the first time I met him, I said, "You tell me about dogs. I don't know very much. We have one." And a guy named Cesar Milan has been one of my mentors, who really has been guiding me and helping me understand and keeping me focused on how important this issue is.
Cool.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Colleagues, any questions or discussion while Mr. Cardenas is here, and then we're going to have the other folks come forward.
Oh, and Ms. Dennis Stein is one of my mentors, too.
You were doing really well up there.
Yeah, you're cruising along.
Yeah.
The Animal Services Commission
did you determine whether or not they were contacted before this decision was made? I know the committee wasn't contacted, but was the Animal Services, the commissioners that are assigned?
No, as far as we can tell, the commissioners have only communicated that they are not happy with the decision, but they haven't specifically told me that they've been consulted.
Okay, I just want to acknowledge that.
But there's more than one commissioner, so I don't want to generalize and say no one was talked to, but no one has reported to me, and we've communicated with some of the commissioners.
But it wasn't formally presented at an Animal Services Commission meeting that this is a proposal?
Correct. Apparently, there was an email from the department, and that's how all of us found out about it.
Okay, and when I want to acknowledge and commend you for your work on this. I was at National League of Cities when my office received a number of emails, and I directed my staff, Mr. Chris Olson and the staff, to aggressively move forward on it. And I don't want to step on your toes with it, but we wanted to make sure that we were introducing motions and doing what we could do, since the public knew before we knew. Somehow that network of folks in the community were well aware of what was going on. And I just want to, for the record, report that this is one additional blunder with the Department of Animal Services General Manager, and how many times these types of things have gone sideways because haven't followed protocol, haven't gone to the commission, haven't gone to council, just done rash decisions, which creates an uproar in this community, and which is obviously detrimental to the animals of the city of Los Angeles. So that's for the record as far as the general manager is concerned, but I want to acknowledge all the work you've done on this because it's a tremendous effort, and I thank you for that.
Thank you. And if you don't mind, I'd like to comment on what Councilmember Zine just said. I think that this council has been very respectful of departments and not trying to micromanage or anything like that. But this is a perfect example of something that just, we have yet to hear one logical argument or understandable argument how this would be a step in the right direction. And none of us have actually been presented with such an argument. None of us have actually understood any arguments. This is truly an exponential action that goes in the wrong direction. When you just look at the number of offspring that a dog or a cat could have if they're not spayed or neutered, the fact that we're euthanizing 15,000 a year still. And with all due respect, how do you get to a no-kill city? And then you take away some of the tools to encourage and partner with people to actually spay and neuter their animals. You're just talking about going in the wrong direction when it comes to euthanizing.
And let me just follow up on that. When we passed that ordinance for spay and neuter, there was a big concern about low-income families.
Absolutely.
And that voucher program was established for them, and to keep the ordinance, and without that component, it's disrespectful to the people who really need that to get those animals spay and neutered. So, again, just one terrible situation that needs to be corrected.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Cardenas.
Tony, let me just ask you one question.
Sure.
You've looked at this in a variety of ways in different parts of the department. Is this a symptom of a larger issue in the department?
Well, I think so. I've been working with this department very, very closely. And again, I've always been trying to be respectful and understand my role as a policymaker and the department's role of doing the wonderful work that they do on a daily basis and the overwhelming work that they have. But yes, this is another example, as Dennis Zine just pointed out. We've had other presentations from the department chairman. If you remember, one time we were in the Van Nuys City Hall, and there was had something to do with pit bulls being trained by
the Pit Bull Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, the Pit Bull Academy.
It just showed up all of a sudden.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, welcome. It's Friday. Here's your Pit Bull Academy, City. Yeah, remember that.
Exactly. So that's another perfect example where I think it is problematic and symptomatic.
Stay as long as you can, Mr. Cardenas. I want to make sure that you have the chance to speak first. And I think we all also want to acknowledge the work of Mr. Alarcon, who's also been very involved in this and could not be here this morning, but wanted everyone to know of his concerns about this decision. I also spoke with him before the hearing was set. He just unavoidably couldn't be here, but he's been a very strong advocate as well. Now, the department is here, Ms. Sample and Mr. Brooks. Mr. Brooks, there are a decent amount of public comment cards. I want to give you the opportunity if you'd like to speak now or speak after public comment, Mr. Brooks, whatever you prefer. I want to give you the courtesy of deciding.
Thank you. I'll be here.
Okay. You can speak now, and then we'll call the comment cards, or you can have the cards first, whatever you prefer, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Council members, just a very brief comment. and AGM Barth is here today to answer any of the particular detailed questions with respect to the budget. But the decision itself is something that I really do appreciate this committee focusing on. Could we have handled how a decision was made differently? Absolutely. Did the decision have to be made? It definitely did. The city has been involved since 1991 in basically a giveaway program with respect to spay-neuter vouchers. With the advent of the spay-neuter ordinance, which the department so wholeheartedly supports, the demand for these vouchers has skyrocketed in an unprecedented and unforeseen manner. It was basically a run on the bank. And the city just cannot afford to give away $30 free coupons to anybody who asks for them. Now, in all of the comments that I've heard, all the council members who have weighed in publicly about this, there's been one consistent theme, and that is that we do need to focus on spay-neuter vouchers for people who truly need them. We do have a program that provides that. It's a $70 voucher program. But the $30 free giveaway program, as I said, was so seriously undermining our efforts to help people who truly needed it, that a decision needed to be made, and it needed to be made.
See, but the problem that so many of us have, Mr. Boakes, is the city will euthanize a dog for free. So we really need to be doing so many more proactive things on the front end to prevent us from getting there. I mean, I think that's the concern people have.
Totally agree, and that's why the city has been very, very effective in reducing its euthanasia rate over the last 37 years. In 1971, the city was euthanizing over 110,000 animals a year. We have gotten that number down in 2007 to 15,000. With the housing foreclosure crisis and economic downturn, it went up slightly in 2008. But the programs we have are very, very effective in reducing euthanasia, and I believe that this is a golden opportunity now to really revisit the spay-neuter voucher program and target it more effectively to help people who are truly in need and not just make it available free for all. And that just basically, I just wanted to put it the discussion in context, because my concern is there are many legitimate concerns with respect to how the decision was made, and I'll take full responsibility for that. What I don't want to be lost on the committee is the fact that a serious discussion and decision needs to be made. Does the city fundamentally, this is a fundamental question of the program, do we want to continue the giveaway program, or do we want to be more strategic and effective in targeting the people who are truly in need in our community, who really need the assistance?
You know what I'm going to do now, colleagues, is with that as an opening, I believe we're going to have a lot of good points raised by the public that the department should respond to. So what I'm going to ask you to do now is move over to the side. We're going to let the public come up and address, and then we'll go into the question and answer with the department, because I think the public's going to bring out some important issues that will need to be responded to. So we'll first hear from Elizabeth Orrick, then Ed Buck, then Phyllis Doherty, then Susan Taylor. So I'll keep calling so that we can keep going. So 4 of you, please come on up. We'll run the clock, and then we'll continue on with the other cards. So first Ms. Orrick, then Mr. Buck, then Ms. Doherty, then Ms. Taylor, and then we'll proceed through the other comments as well. Good morning, Ms. Orrick. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, council members. My name is Elizabeth Orrick. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I am on the advisory committee for the city's spay and neuter ordinance, and for the record, we were not consulted nor informed about this proposal. We heard about it from a rescue group after we had formed the report that we were planning to submit next week, which we now are going to have to rewrite tonight till the midnight hour. I'm very concerned about the proposed termination of the spay and neuter program, because this ordinance is a very viable means of addressing the pet overpopulation crisis in our city. The City Council made a very proactive, courageous decision when they approved that ordinance, and the rest of the country is watching to see how it's going to fare. But it can only succeed if the low-income and senior residents who have to now comply with that law have the resources to do so. And if it fails, there's no hope for the rest of the country to follow our lead. And if it's perceived as unfairly targeting the senior or low-income community, that's going to be a PR nightmare for this city. I understand the need to make budget cuts, but eliminating this program is not going to reduce the deficit because the people who no longer have the resources to comply with the law are going to start relinquishing their animals in order to avoid the penalty of noncompliance, and that's going to create a greater burden on our already overcrowded shelters, which is just going to increase the budget deficit instead of reducing it. One of our committee's recommendations was going to be, as Mr. Boakes just mentioned, to eliminate the $30 general public coupons and roll that funding into the free low-income vouchers. But that would be a fiscally neutral recommendation. Eliminating the program altogether was never going to be one of our recommendations. Now, I know that no one wants to implement layoffs, but the reality is that departments, agencies, and companies all across the country are having to take those kind of steps in this economic crisis. $150,000 is not a lot of money, and if a few positions can be eliminated in order to provide hundreds and hundreds of people the resources to comply with the law, protect our city's animals, and avoid additional burden on our taxpayers, I think that's a strategy worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rourke. Mr. Buck, good morning.
My name's Ed Buck. I've been involved in animal rescue and also in social compassion in legislation. We've been pushing for the statewide spay and neuter bill because we realize it's kind of like a boat that is sinking. It doesn't matter if it's your end of the boat that's sinking, we're all going down. I got to tell you how refreshing it is to be before this committee and to deal with the LA City Council. When it comes to this issue, I'm standing here going, wow, you get it. So most of the comments that I've prepared, you have sort of preempted in your understanding. It really is penny wise and dollar foolish to scale back on spay and neuter. And it is very refreshing that you get it. I mean, at a real visceral level. Let me just add, since this is the Public Safety Commission, that we have another aspect of this, aside from the compassionate aspect, the public safety aspect. 75% of all dog bites come from intact male dogs. In the United States of America, Southern California leads the nation in dog bites of letter carriers. The number 2 slot was filled by Van Nuys, by the way, the Van Nuys district. This comes as something of a surprise because we don't think of ourselves as, a gritty area where this is going to happen. But in fact, it's here. And in a recent 8-year period, the population of dogs in the United States only went up by 4%, but the number of dog bites went up by 36%. This should provide another incentive to direct resources towards spay and neuter, because an intact male won't roam, won't form feral packs, and won't bite your kids. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buck. Ms. Doherty.
Phyllis Doherty of Animal Issues Movement. Number one, I want to answer Councilman Zion's question. No, this did not go to the commissioners. I attend every commission meeting. Mr. Boakes announced that there would be cutbacks, but no indication of what they would be. That was on Monday, and the memo came out on Tuesday or Wednesday that the voucher program was being ended. So no, there was no warning. I would totally oppose anything that cuts back on staff. We need every person that we have working in our shelters, and we need more of them providing care for these animals. The $2 million for euthanasia probably includes, because euthanasia is not expensive in itself. However, when you're keeping dogs like this, supposedly an 8-year-old dog that looks like probably it's at least a 12-year-old dog in a shelter from August until today, 2 days ago when I pulled this up, what is that, 8 months? You do have unruly costs in your shelter. It's the mismanagement of the way the animals are being cared for that's causing the drain on the money, and that money could be going into spay and neuter. Also, if Mr. Boakes were licensing, which is the funding for the spay and neuter program, the $2 out of each license at least, we would have plenty of money for spay and neuter. This is a matter of mismanagement. It's not the issue at stake right this moment, and you've got to look at the broader picture. The number of animals have been dropping since the licensing differential. That's what made the difference. When we put the $100 and the $10, the incentive was there. These coupons should only go to low-income people. That's something that has never been controlled. A lot of the animals are not even owned for which they're using these vouchers. I just want to show you one more thing that shows you the mismanagement on this. These are the licenses, your dog license. I received one in July of last year. There's a place here to do a donation for the Spay-Neuter Fund. I received one for 22. The donation for the Spay-Neuter Fund is gone. If Mr. Volks and Ms. Barth knew that we were coming close to the end of the funding for the Spay-Neuter program, why did they take off the opportunity for donations?
Seems like a pretty good point. Ms. Taylor?
Hi, I'm the Executive Director of Actors and Others for Animals, and we're different. We're not really a rescue organization. We are a spay-neuter organization and have been since 1971, and I've worked with the City of Los Angeles since 1971 and have distributed these coupons since the beginning. And so we know more than most how important they are to the LA Pet Guardians. However, and I personally have come down through your committee to the City Council for the last 10 years and asked that the coupons really be given a look at and see what where they can be put best to use. Because I really would tell you that what they tell you a spay-neuter costs today is not what it costs. I ask all of you to go home and call your own vet and see what a spay-neuter costs today. These prices are skyrocketing, and I bet you wouldn't be surprised to know that a lot of yours, they'll tell you it's $300. I have asked the department on many occasions to meet with them and do this. They never came to us. Not only did they not come to the City Council, did they not come to the Commission, did they not come to the advisory community, but they didn't come to the community. They didn't come to all of us that distribute these coupons, that know spay-neuter, and ask us what we thought we could do. And to say now, isn't this a wonderful thing that he's done, is how Mr. Volks is framing this, that he's coming to tell you that he just wants a discussion. Well, I also want to tell you that I don't think this is, you're going to reinstate these, I hope, but this is a Band-Aid. We're down here all the time because problems after problems occur. We need to know that next fiscal year, this is also going to be available and it's going to be put to better use. And I stand again to say I'm ready to give assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next four speakers, Rebecca Chambliss, Marilyn Vitoni, Lynn Amano, Bobby Durofshar. I apologize in advance for every name that I mispronounce.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Cardenas?
I do apologize. I have to get back to my district in the Valley, but if you would afford me an opportunity to say a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to submit for the record this letter from the Department of Animal Services on their letterhead, which speaks to them ending the program. And then secondly, I'd like to also thank all the organizations that you're going to hear from and beyond. Not all of them could be here. They've got overwhelming work, and they do wonderful work out in the community. The rescue groups, for example, are extremely efficient when it comes to spay and neutering. They do things that government just can't afford to do. For example, when it comes to people who need to spay and neuter their animals, some of them actually have people on their teams that actually go out and pick up the animals, bring them to be spayed and neutered, taking them back. That's the kind of service that we need to make sure we continue in the City of Los Angeles, and we don't curtail that in any fashion, in any way. In addition to that, I'd just like to remind the committee that the advisory committee that was started last year with the legislation by Alarcón and myself to start the mandatory spay and neuter program in the City of Los Angeles, that is a committee that each council member gets to appoint somebody. So I think that it's very important for us to understand that we all need to respect the department's role and need to run their departments, but at the same time, we are a democracy in which they've elected us. In addition to that, we serve the people, and for us to create a committee that actually has that kind of well-rounded representation from throughout the city, and for them not to have been consulted, again, goes to Mr. Parks' question is this something that we've seen before in different fashion, and I think it has. So with that, I wish that I could stay and hear the whole committee, but I'm sure that it's in good hands. And also, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for hearing this matter so quickly. It's something that developed last week. It's something that was introduced to council on Friday, and I want to commend you and thank you for hearing this. I was supposed to be out of town as you and I spoke, Mr. Chairman. You urged me to be here. I wanted to be here, so I rearranged my schedule so that I could be here for this important issue. So once again, I want to thank the committee members for attending as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cardenas. Thank you very much. We'll keep your staff abreast of what we do today. So Ms. Chambliss, Ms. Vitoni, Ms. Amano, Mr. Durofshar.
one of the issues with the spay and neuter voucher program is that there has not been any statistical data kept with regard to the program, so that many of the $30 vouchers have been used by technically low-income people after the $70 vouchers run out. So it's hard to say to get rid of that program entirely, because there are a lot of people, those are the most widely used coupons. The 30s. The 30s. If you look at cost per voucher and how many are used, the $30 vouchers are a lot more cost efficient than the $70 vouchers, and they may or may not be being used by low-income people. But the problem is, in the economy today, a lot of people can use the assistance. I wanted to make a suggestion to the committee in that in the next fiscal year, something to think about is giving a contract to a 501c3 private organization to run the spay and neuter program for several reasons. One, the 501c3 can raise additional funds to supplement the program. Two, LA Animal Control can't end the program if the funds are given out at the beginning of the year. They can keep data, they can report back to the committees, to the council. The mobile unit and the on-site spay and neuter clinics are both contracted out, so this would just make sense to contract out the voucher program to another organization who can run it.
Interesting idea. Thank you for that.
Hi, I'm Alan, and thank you for having us here. You know, I support Rebecca a lot. I thought she came up with a really good idea. I'm also supporting, I'm here with Whiskers and Tails as a rescue person. I know I was very saddened when I heard by email about the voucher, and several of my rescue organizations were I happened to be at the harbor shelter that day while they were turning in their vouchers, which mean a lot to us. I mean, it's $30, but as you know, at any veterinarian, I think the lowest cost when I called around was $185 for even a small dog. And that means everything to us, you know, when you take the overall cost of everything that we do. And that's our first priority, is getting the dogs spayed and neutered, you know. And I think that Rebecca's idea is a very good idea, because at least, you know, we'd have a good idea and it would be managed, I think, a little better. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Lynn Amano. I'm the founder of Whiskers and Tails Foundation. Since I'm in Rancho Palos Verdes, I am part of the county, but I wanted to come today because I am also a New Hope partner with the city of Los Angeles. I take in animals from all the various shelters that you have, from east to west to south central. And right now, with all the foreclosures and job losses, we have so many spay-neuter requests, and we have to pay out of pocket. We try to generate money, but as quickly as people are calling me, 100 calls and emails a week for spay-neuter, and they're all in Wilmington, Harbor City, you know, your sections of the LA Strip, and we just don't have the funding for it. We have to drive around to, like, Amanda Foundation, Fix Nation, and look it up. One by one, we're transporting dogs to Clinicos. We can't wait till Clinico opens at the Harbor Shelter, because, I mean, that's low-cost spay-neuter, but we can subsidize, you know, if we did go nonprofit to 501c for spay-neuter, and you guys can contract, like, with Amanda Foundation, Fix Nation, and get those mobile spay-neuter mobiles, you know, in areas and parking lots where we can have it done. It would be out of the, you know, you wouldn't have to worry about it, because we take, you know, I mean, our hearts are there. And I just wanted to support all the spay-neuter ordinance in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you for coming. Sir.
Good morning. My name is Bobby Durafshar. I'm a founder of New Leash on Life Animal Rescue. Also, I'm a resident of Los Angeles, and also I'm a volunteer. I've been volunteer for Department of Animal Services since 1994, and I was a coordinator volunteer for more than 3 years. I'm also sitting on the spay and neuter committee with a bunch of very hard-working volunteers, and we work daily, hours and hours a day and after hours, to hopefully come up with the idea to you guys to be able to help the situations in Los Angeles. Also, I'm a professional dog trainer and a behaviorist. A lot of people are going to talk to you about numbers. Numbers make sense. You will look at it, the number of animals being born, saving $30 or $70, and spending hundreds of dollars and millions of dollars to actually killing these animals is not acceptable and it's very visible. What is important to me is the public safety as well. I'm one of those people more on the streets, helping the public, dealing with the neighborhood and community and rescue community, and I have a lot of friends and a colleague which they work very hard day and night. When you see a 22 years old young lady at 3 o'clock in the morning trapping animals so they don't end up in the shelters, and say, you know, they putting the focus of their life in danger. We need that $30 to help the public and community to rescue these animals, and other rescue organizations finance the rest of them to be able to not get them to the shelter system. I personally, and a lot of people I talk to, I'm absolutely against of stopping this program even for 5 minutes. There are animals dying, there's a safety issue, a pregnant mom, it's very dangerous to public. Roaming dogs, 85% by the Highway Patrol are the unaltered animals roaming to mate. When they are packed, anybody come close to them, they will attack. We're dealing with an absolutely huge public safety, and saving $1 and here over $100,000 to helping this issue is absolutely ridiculous. Hope you guys can make a better decision for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our final 4 speakers, Mary Catalano, Pam Wilkinson, Amy Gilbreth, Peter Davieri. Take it away.
Yes, hi, I'm Mary Catalano. I'm an independent rescuer. I've been rescuing animals from the animal shelters in Los Angeles for about 8 years now. And I imagine that you are aware of the fact that it is springtime and it is a big disaster for this to be occurring at this time, especially because people's form of birth control that are low income and poor and not educated bring in boxes of animals that are soon euthanized, because if they can't get a rescue group to take that animal on, baby kittens, baby puppies, that same day, maybe the staff can bottle feed them 1 feeding, they are euthanized. I've been at the pound on a Saturday afternoon when 15 kittens came in, little bottle baby kittens that I had to take home and bottle feed or they would have been killed. This is a very disastrous time of year for this to occur. The people that are poor, that are uneducated, are going to be dropping off animals in buckets. They want to do the right thing. I have signage at my adoptions. I do in the Promenade in Santa Monica in Spanish and English. Free spay neuter, ask me how. People are taking the information. They want to do the right thing. They want to abide by the law. They know about the ordinance, fortunately. I don't know, I've heard that we have a budget of the LA Animal Services they have 2 assistant general managers. I don't know why. I don't know where that money came from. Money being cut to save the lives of these animals. I don't know what it costs to euthanize these animals. I don't know what it costs to house them. But this is springtime, and this is when animals are born. And these animals need to be spayed and neutered. They are giving people that adopt animals at the pound lovely little plastic folders. It's paper. They don't need it. It's a waste of money. Cuts need to be made in other ways. Animals' lives are at stake, and people do want to do the right thing, and they know about the ordinance. Please reinstate this. We can't do without this. It's a devastation.
Thank you.
My name is Pam Wilkinson, and it is a really terrible time for the program not to be available, especially to low-income people. However, just so everybody knows, Mr. Boakes didn't just one day say, hey, let's cut the spay and neuter program. He, as every other department in the city, was asked to make cuts. And as public safety, it would be nice in the future that something's passed where all public safety budgets are exempt from cuts, including fire, police, and animal services. Currently, well, actually, for years, LA Animal Services has been operating on a very skeleton budget. So I'm sure it was very difficult, if not impossible, to find areas to cut. Mr. Boakes, if you look in our past at least 10 years, if not even longer, he is the best general manager that has been here for 10 years, if not 20. He does try. He was trying to explain that the $30 off coupon is for all city all City of LA residents. The free coupons are for the low-income people. And he feels the program needs to be revamped. I feel the program needs to be reinstated immediately, especially with it being spring. But the program, while it's working, it does need to be a little bit revamped. In a sense, the $30 off coupons, which are wonderful, we've had for years. If a vet's charging $300, how is a $30 off coupon going to really help anybody? Now, the poor person, okay, we can't take away the free program. That would be ludicrous, okay? Because they are not going to come up with $200 or even $100 to be able to sterilize their animal. The mobile spay and neuter clinics are actually the very best value for the money because they don't charge you the vaccines, which even the free coupons will. They don't charge you a vet visit, which either if you have the $30 off coupon, some vets like Clinico and some other nonprofit, they'll just fix the animal, use that $30 off coupon, great. Other vets are charging a vet visit and vaccines, yes. Dr. Vasquez, $50 for vaccines, whether you have a free coupon or $30 off coupon. So there's no upsell with the mobile clinics. I feel that it's really important for public safety to remember back in the years that mothers walked their children to school with a baseball bat. Do you guys remember that years ago? Yeah, okay.
If you could just conclude, that'd be great.
Pardon?
If you could just conclude so we can get...
I will conclude, okay. My concluding is to please find additional funding. I think that's what LA Animal Services needs help with, to reinstate immediately the spay and neuter coupon program. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Amy Gilbreth. I am the Executive Director of the Found Animals Foundation. It probably doesn't make you feel any better, but please know that municipalities and agencies all over the country are struggling with this. The demand for low-cost spay and neuter services, which are so desperately needed, always exceeds a municipality's ability to pay, or at least in all the examples I've seen. So LA is not unique in that regard. Where LA is unique is its leadership on this issue, and I thank all of you for supporting that. But now that we have this ordinance in place, and given the subsidy programs that have previously existed, I just hope that LA can continue to lead the nation and show folks how these programs can work. My organization has pledged $1 million in funding over a 5-year period to the PetSmart Charities Spay Los Angeles initiative. That group has been generous enough to pledge nearly $14 million in funding for high-volume, low-cost spay-neuter clinics in the LA area. However, in order to trigger that full amount of money, the community must come up with matching funds. And the voucher program is one important component of that. So by reinstating and continuing the voucher program in future fiscal years, you're going to actually double your money, because PetSmart Charities is going to make a matching grant to match the money that the city spends when we get these Clinico and Fix Nation and other organizations up and running. So I encourage you, not only because the nation is looking at us and your leaders, and it's the right thing to do, but also because the money that the city invests right now will get doubled if you can find a way to work with the department and make this funding continue to happen.
Thank you. Final speaker, sir.
Hi, my name is Peter DeBeery. I represent Feline Rescue and Ongoing Guardianship Organization, a program that my wife started to help those within the city that she finds out about be able to bring cats, felines, to the vets to be able to spay, neuter. She normally gets telephone calls from organizations that find abandoned pets someplace in a neighborhood. She goes, picks up the animal, typically is pregnant, and takes them to one of our local vets that has low-cost spay-neuter programs. We have found that in the past, a pregnant animal, certainly people drop off animals in parks and other locations primarily because they are pregnant and they can't afford to spay or neuter, and the abandoned animal population increases, costing the city more than if we had been able to encourage the pet owner for taking responsible care of their pets. The use for the low-cost spay-neuter program, whether it be the $30 or the $70, is very helpful in continuing to support the organization and being able to continue to help those folks that call that need animal help, help them or help fund the spay-neuter program. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I appreciate the members of the public who came, and most of you appears are staying. I'd like to ask the department to come back, and we're going to have council members ask questions. And I think members have a lot of questions. I'm just going to start with this one, which is half question, half comment, Mr. Boakes, which is, I appreciate that you came forward and said that you essentially regret or apologize for the lack of process in making this decision. And then you launched into sort of a public policy explanation of, well, the very low-income stuff is obviously still needed, the $30 vouchers need to be considered. And here's my problem with what you've come forward and said, which is that if you just came forward and said that, and said this is something that needs to be studied, it needs to be considered, we need to take it to the advisory committee, take it to the community members, and ask them for their input, and then it were studied and input were provided, and certain foundations came forward and said, well, here's why we think it's important, or here's how we can match. That would be one thing. But to take the action before there's any study or any community input, just from a public policy standpoint, makes no sense. It makes no sense. That, in addition to all the comments that we've heard, that's what I think you just did plain wrong as a public policy manager. And that's why I do expect the council is going to order you to reinstate it. But do you understand that concern?
I do understand the concern and the perception.
It's just backwards. You study something before you act.
Totally agree.
You don't act and then say, well, let's study and think about what the impact is.
I understand, Mr. Chair, and with all due respect, we have been studying this internally, but it wasn't until the day that we made the decision that it became clear to us that the demand was so far exceeding the funding that it could have caused real critical problems to the department. I could be coming back to you in May telling you I can't make payroll. It's that serious an issue.
Colleagues?
Let me just, because I have to run to another meeting, one of the things that concerns me, when we just went through the financial status report and every department came in as it related to issues that impacted their budget, I don't recall this item being presented as an alternative to close the budget gap. And one of the things that we had asked department heads throughout this exercise we've been going through is tell the council exactly what you intend to do so that they're fully aware, such as we've done with Rec and Park and libraries. But I don't recall this issue coming up during the financial status report.
Councilmember Parks, Linda Barth with Animal Services. I appeared at the Budget and Finance Committee in discussing the mid-year financial report and did talk about having to close the gap that is left in our budget because of the furlough.
No, we talked about closing the gap, but
and
the process of closing it, I don't know if that came out clear as to what your intent was.
Council members, it may not have been clear. I attempted to make clear that that spay-neuter, that we could not make up the entire approximately $300,000 out of our regular budgeted funds, and that meant some spay-neuter money would have to be used to close this gap. And I did mention it at that time.
Okay. Then it went completely over my head and others, because the issue, that the reason for those reporting periods is to advise us exactly what's going to happen, and generally it's part of the report that you give the CAO and say, here's the fundamental steps I'm going to use to close the budget gap. It's not conversation, it's just not conjecture, it's actually giving them what you intend to do, and then when they submit it, we can then say yay or nay. But the key is that until it's part of the financial status report, generally it's not perceived to be acceptable or approved until the council comes forward. But to say verbally that if you said that this is our intent, and then implement it without that review, as we've asked every department, puts us all in a bind, because we hear about it later once you've implemented it. And then certainly we kind of went back cursory and looked at the reports. It was not written in the financial status report as one of your strategies for closing your budget gap. And that's a concern if we're going to do something outside of that process and then basically surprise us all when it becomes public.
Council members, I apologize if it wasn't clear in my testimony. In discussions with the city administrative officer, which is where we get down and dirty in the details, I think we've tried to be as forthcoming as possible at every step of the way with every dollar and every situation with the program.
With Mr. Parks, he has very, very, very high, ultra-high frequency hearing capabilities. Sometimes he hears departments say things when they haven't said them. So I've never, so if he says you didn't say it, you didn't say it.
I don't remember that at all.
Mr. Smith was just saying the same thing. Mr. Zine?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Brooks, you have a tendency to do things without going through the commission. You have a tendency to do things without going through protocol. And the pit bull situation with the ex-cons was a classic example, which got this council up in arms. Again, you come up with a decision. There's a committee that's been established, didn't consult them, didn't consult the commission, and what we have in this process is the protocol. You go to the commission, you explain what you want to do. That's what happens with the police commission. That's what happens with the fire commission. Chief Bratton runs the police department, but he works with the commission. You have a tendency not to work with anybody. And what you've done is alienate a whole bunch of people. The folks that love animals, council members, me included, you've alienated yourself. So when you come up with a program like this to save money, and a report's going to come out at the end of this month from a group that's been established, you're slapping them in the face, and you're just arbitrarily doing it. What about coming forward and saying, we need to curtail this, we need to screen people, we need to find out who needs this program, who doesn't need the program. The $30 voucher, the animal world out there, the people who really want to care for the animals. But what you've done is one blunder after another. This is another example of short-sightedness, lack of responsibility, and you've got assistant general managers that you should be working with, and you sit there and say, well, how are we going to handle this? So what you create is a huge uproar in the city of Los Angeles. You tell the people we're going to stop a program, we're going to spend more money with impounding animals and killing them than the voucher program when we want to have a no-kill city. And I just wonder how you run a department without consulting your commissioners and/or a committee that's going to prepare a report that's going to come out at the end of this month and just bypass them all. And then I introduce a motion, my colleagues introduce a motion, Mr. Weiss, the chair of this committee, decides to get this done today because it's important for Los Angeles. And all you had to do was think, you know what? This is controversial. This is going to create some problems. Let's get some input. You've got to cut your budget. The police department has to cut their budget. Everybody's got to cut their budget. We know there's a lot of people who are looking to say where they're going to cut the budgets. But to arbitrarily say we're going to cut this part of it versus something else, and that's the problem. The fire department was here this morning. They're going to eliminate some positions. So you talk about public safety, fire department, police department, animal services, everybody has to chip in. But what we do is sit together and work to come up with a plan. You don't come up with a plan, you just do it. And this is not a dictatorship. This is called democracy. And when you alienate us and alienate the public, then you're slapping everybody in the face. And then you wonder why people aren't happy with you. And you know I'm not happy with you. It's no secret. I'm still waiting for a report back to my personnel committee on questions we have regarding animal services, which I haven't received a report back yet. So you don't run a department without consulting other people. You don't run a department that creates this kind of controversy that takes our time to do what you should have done in the first place. Because if the $30 program goes out to everyone, the easiest thing would say, we need to screen people to find out who deserves that. The $70 program, we need to make sure they're low income. And there's ways to prove they're low income. Instead of just abandoning the whole program. And then I hear you want to just do it temporarily till April 1st. Why? Because you're now in a squeeze. You're in a squeeze because you got everybody upset. Unnecessarily so. And I'm frustrated time and time again when you come up with these ideas that slap the public, slap the council members, and we go through another disaster. And this is another example of poor management, poor leadership in your department, and you are the one who's responsible. I was with President Obama a few days ago when he spoke. He said, I'm the president, I'm the one responsible. Well, you're the one responsible. So don't blame anybody but yourself. And if you learn anything, you got a commission to deal with, and you got people within your department that you need to deal with. So we don't have to spend our time doing what you should have done in the first place. and let the committee that's been established supposed to work with these people. I am very frustrated with your lack of leadership and your lack of ability to get the job done. I am done.
Councilmember Zine, I do respect your opinion tremendously, believe it or not.
Shared by many people of Los Angeles.
And I regret, to whatever extent I've alienated anyone in the city from the department, because the department definitely needs the help of the community. I think it's important to understand it was never the intention of the department, and never did the department issue any statement that we were ending the program. It was always a temporary suspension. We didn't know when we issued the
What's the difference? Excuse me, but it's kind of a simple guy. So what's the difference between stopping it and stopping it?
Well, a temporary suspension suggests that we had to regroup. We had to do exactly what Councilmember Zine was suggesting. There had to be a strategy. There had to be a plan. But while there was the bleeding of the program, as it was escalating in unprecedented numbers and unforeseen numbers, it seemed prudent. It seemed a prudent management leadership decision to say we've got to put the brakes on. We've got to evaluate the situation. The giveaway program that the city's been conducting since 1991 has got to be reevaluated. How can we be more effective?
I have to pause the hearing for just 1 second because Mr. Parks needs to leave to go to an event, a significant event in his district. And if you could just, for the record, call items 3 and 4 for the moment, or I'll call items 3 and 4. Who's here on 3 and 4? Mr. Parks and I both need to be present. No, just sit there for a second. This can take 1 second. Mr. Parks and I both need to be present to discuss items 3 and 4, and unfortunately, Mr. Parks needs to go. Is 3 and 4 together, right, Ms. Ample? So we're going to, unfortunately, because you have been here for a few hours, and I apologize, we're going to ask you to come back at the next public safety hearing. You had sort of a verbal status report on your RFP anyway. But Mr. Parks had some concerns he just wanted to present to you at this moment, and then he's going to leave, then we're going to continue with the animal item. Mr. Parks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just ask, as you go through the RFP process, that there's certain issues that would be relevant to the committee here. Number one, the issue of cost, that we get an accurate breakdown of cost, that we also look as equally as important on the non-emergency usage of the system as we do for the emergency usage of it, and we also make an effort to ensure that we've extended the usage and the how it's adapted to the proprietary departments as well as the council control departments, and that we look at a system that's going to be serviceable citywide as opposed to any localized or department-wise. Also, I'd ask the CAO and the CLA to begin to look at potential funding sources, be there grants, be they dealing with grants or other funding or sources so that we could move forward on this issue at the time that the RFP has been let and returned, as opposed to having the RFP and then starting to go out and look for revenue sources. So we ask if we can do that and have that kind of information available when we get back, when this is rescheduled.
Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Mr. Parks. I apologize to everyone who came on that item, and we're now going to go back to the animal services item. And that item, those items 3 and 4 will be reset on the next public safety agenda. All right. But again, Mr. Boakes, I mean, you're going to hear what you've heard today times 15. Okay? And so, I mean, there's sort of, and frankly, my suspicion is that the other elected officials in the city feel the same way as well. So you kind of have a choice, which is that you can continue to put up this, defense or whatever, or you can help us figure out how to get out of this mess, because Mr. Cardenas' motion is going to be in council on Friday. I believe in council on Friday. And I know what we're going to order you to do. But Mr. Smith, you were in the middle of...
I'm really puzzled, Mr. Boakes, that this has been a major policy statement of this council and the mayor's. It's not just a line item in the budget left up to you to determine whether we do or not. I concur with Mr. Parks. I never heard that. There's 5 members on that committee. most of us are pretty sharp in listening to these kind of presentations because this is really serious stuff we're doing more than ever this year. And if the item had even been mentioned in that committee on the FSR a couple weeks ago, that this was a reduction, that your reorganization plan to reduce your budget accordingly would include any kind of diminution or cessation, temporary or not, of the spay and neuter program, somebody on that committee would have caught it and said, wait a minute. It was never in the documents we saw, I'll guarantee you that. And I do not believe, as member of that committee, and Mr. Parks said also, that it was ever discussed. And I find it shocking that when this mayor has made it a very clear, big policy statement, that it is his goal to take this city to this goal, that you would make such a major change in that policy without a public discussion, either with your commission, with the mayor, or with this council. I'm really shocked. And Ed, I've been very supportive of you for a couple of years in face of a lot of things, but my patience is wearing very thin.
I hear you, council member. I do want to let the council members know that I am meeting with the chiefs of staff of Mr. Cardenas' office and Alarcon's office shortly after this meeting, or the commission meeting that's also going on concurrently. I welcome any of your chiefs to be there as well, so that we can go through all of the facts and all of the concerns that you have. I do want your help. I am asking for your help. If I've said anything that sounded defensive, it wasn't defensive, but it was concern with respect to what we as a city can do going forward. And we do need to have that discussion, and I look forward to your help with that.
Are there any other options that, given the reaction that you're seeing and feeling and obviously hearing, you don't need to answer this right now, but the whole notion of preventive measures, especially in dense areas, especially in impoverished areas, the magnitude is amazing, significant. I'm assuming that you're looking at other options other than what you are proposing on this.
We certainly are looking for alternative funding. We've approached different foundations and different organizations to assist. I do appreciate the question because I would like to put what the department is facing in some context. We have nearly a $14 million shelter that we're not able to open because we don't have the budget. We have 31 employees who we are employing with one-time funding that ends June 31st. And we have to think in terms of what we're going to do July 1. We have 18 employees in unfunded positions. We have scrubbed our budget line by line, time after time after time, trying to find the resources to make up this $414,000 deficit caused by the furlough program. And we've come very, very close to doing it, well under $100,000 from within. But understanding this program, this is a program that from the time a coupon is issued to the time it's redeemed can be up to 6 months. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars of coupons out in the community that people may have never have used in the past, but they're using them now, and they're using them in record numbers and escalating numbers. So we don't yet know how much in the red we could end up being if all of those coupons are redeemed.
Again, this is the dissonance here, and I'm not making this personal about you, okay? I don't think any of us want it. The dissonance is, if you asked all of us, do we recognize that this is a challenging public policy problem, we would all say yes. If you asked us, do we have concerns because we have responsibilities for the fiscal well-being of the city, do we have concerns about how much this costs and whether it's escalating and how it can be funded, we would all say yes. If you asked us, should we cut it off now and study it, we would say no. If you asked us, could we study it and make sure that all the participatory groups can participate in helping study it so that there can be a smart public policy way to go forward, we would all say yes to that. You acted first before consulting and studying. We're not going to dispute with you that it's a public policy challenge. You shot first and you want to ask questions later. That's our problem.
And that's
I'm just being fair about that. I mean, that's the problem.
And that's been the case in the past. And I will tell you candidly, your supervisors have met with me. They have no confidence in your leadership. The public has met with me, no confidence in leadership. You've had problems at the shelters that came to my attention that we had to intervene.
Which item? This item?
You talk about personnel and personnel issues. You had no problem asking for assistant general managers in the department. What about the workers that do the job out in the field? And when you have time to do the blog, because I've heard about the blog you do, I don't know if any general manager in the city of Los Angeles has time to do a blog with all the responsibilities, yet you find time to do a blog.
On the weekends, sir.
Pardon me?
During my time off.
I don't care if it's your time off or time on. You're a general manager for the city of Los Angeles, and you're responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like council members, just like the chief of police. So you have no time off. You're a general manager that works 7 days a week. And when you have time off to do a blog, I don't know if any other general manager in the city of Los Angeles has time to do a blog, to either defend themselves or an action. But you've lost confidence with your employees, with your supervisors, and with members of the public.
I mean, I guess our concern, Mr. Boakes, is that this all seems clear to everyone but you. Ms. Sample, my chief of staff, is going to join the meeting that CD6 and CD7 are hosting with you. This council is going to make you reinstate this program. And you're going to have to work with the council, the mayor's office, and the CAO to manage your budget. But this won't be the way that your budget gets managed. We all know that. It's unfortunate that you won't acknowledge today, you won't acknowledge that, but I'm hoping that between now and Friday, perhaps as a result of this meeting, that you will begin to see that that's the appropriate way to run the department. We all know you've got challenges in the department. All general managers do. This was the wrong decision. It was the wrong way to make the decision.
Mr. Chair, let me please be clear. I am not disputing what the committee is saying, and I take it seriously and wholeheartedly.
There's a final card from Mr. Pollack. Mr. Pollack, do you want to speak? Yes. Okay. And then after that, we're gonna conclude the item. You put a card in, sir, so you have the right to speak if you want to speak.
Reverend Pollack, Duke Pinewood Avenue, resident of the city of Los Angeles. I've been hearing all kinds of things happening here.
He just wants you to speak into the microphone, sir.
I have been hearing many things that have been happening within the city of Los Angeles with respect to the Department of Animal Services. They have X-ray machines that they're not using. They have a limited number of veterinarians. They have implemented programs and then rescinded those programs. It seems to me that all of this is coming down from the top. There's something really wrong here. This needs to be addressed.
Okay. Great. Thank you, sir. And look, thanks to everyone who came today. This issue is going to get resolved. It's just a question of who's going to do the resolving. But we really appreciate that all of you are so focused on it. And we're very fortunate that Mr. Cardenas and Mr. Alarcon have been so focused on it and are going to continue to lead us through as we get to council on Friday with their motion. I believe their motion is in council on Friday. So that concludes our hearing of this item. Just so you all know, we did not have an action item on today. The hearing was set before the motion was introduced, and in any event, the motion will be in full council, so it's sort of redundant or duplicative to hear it here. It will be in council. I think the issues are out there, and I know the mayor's office is very concerned about this as well. Hopefully, we will have a good action item for us to take on Friday. So thank you. That's this hearing. Mr. White, let's hear the next item, please.
Item 5, communication from the City Attorney and Ordinance and Board of Fire Commissioners and CAO reports relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code sections 573319 and 570202 to provide additional emergency and evacuation requirements for high-rise buildings and related fees.
Chief Fry and Ms. Jackson, welcome. I know I'm risking losing a quorum at some point, but so take it away, just don't take it that far away.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, committee. What we've brought in front of you today is a motion to where we would like to basically implement a evacuation program and training program for our high-rises in the city. After we saw 9/11 and what we've seen with just being in this area with earthquakes, fires, that we feel it incumbent as a emergency responder to do everything we can to make our citizens safe. And that is the preparedness portion of the fire department's responsibility. We've worked with the BOMA, the Business Managers Association. We have their concurrence on this, and they agree with the idea of really educating people what to do prior to an emergency happening.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief, and we do appreciate all the work that you have put in with all these other different folks over the years to make sure that it's a consensus.
Unlike the previous department. You'll leave your seats immediately.
That will not be the sound during our training.
This is a test of the emergency broadcast system.
No, you guys have worked long and hard on it, and you've done it the right way.
That's weird.
Ms. Jackson, you okay with what he's done?
Yes, and I am here to answer